3,000 years ago, on a peninsula of volcanic rock jutting into the Pacific, a civilization with no tractors, no synthetic inputs, no soil testing laboratories, grew enough food on a single acre to sustain entire extended families, generation after generation. They did it without depleting the ground, without rotating away when the land gave out, without purchasing anything. The secret was not a technique exactly, it was a substance, a single black granular material costing almost nothing that they worked into every bed, every growing mound, every patch of cultivated earth they kept. And here's the part worth sitting with. That same substance was independently discovered on at least 4 separate continents, with civilizations that had no contact with each other. The Amazon, the Pacific Northwest, West Africa, the Korean Peninsula. They did not collaborate. They did not share notes. They each arrived at the same answer through the same careful observation of what happened to ground that had been touched by controlled fire. That answer was biochar, and the fact that 4 isolated civilizations across thousands of miles and thousands of years all landed in the same place should tell you something about how undeniable the results were. This is the deeper story, not just what biochar is, but why it works the way it does, at a level most gardening resources never reach, and why the gap between what the research says and what gets sold at the garden center is not an accident.
What dead soil actually looks like from the inside. Most people think of soil health in terms of color. Dark soil equals good soil. Light, sandy soil equals bad soil. Clay soil equals compacted and difficult. That is a reasonable shorthand, but it misses the actual mechanism. Fertile soil is not really about dirt at all. It is about population density. Specifically, the population density of microorganisms living between soil particles. A single teaspoon of truly healthy living soil contains more individual microorganisms than there are human beings on the planet. Not more types, more individual organisms. Bacteria, fungi, archaea, protozoa, nematodes. An entire invisible civilization packed into a space smaller than a sugar cube. Those organisms are the engine of fertility. They decompose organic matter and release the nutrients locked inside it into forms plant roots can actually absorb. Nitrogen does not become available to plants simply because it exists in the soil. It becomes available because specific bacteria convert it into a usable form. Phosphorus does not migrate to root tips on its own. It arrives there because mycorrhizal fungi, essentially an extension of the root system itself, thread through the soil and deliver it. The plant and the microbial community are not separate things. They are a single organism operating in tight partnership. So when that microbial population collapses from drought, chemical application, compaction, or simply exhaustion, the plant loses its support system. It can still absorb nutrients that are added directly in dissolved synthetic form, but it loses access to everything the biology provides. And what the biology provides is not a minor supplement. It is the majority of what a thriving plant needs. This is the foundational problem with how most gardens are currently managed. Not that the gardener is doing something wrong exactly, but that the entire approach is aimed at feeding the plant while ignoring the population that feeds the plant. Biochar does not make that mistake, and understanding why requires understanding what is actually happening at the microscopic level inside a single particle.
2. The structure that changes everything. Take a piece of oak wood, a section of bamboo, a handful of spent grain from a brewery, walnut shells from last autumn's harvest. Heat any of these to temperatures between 300 and 700 degrees Celsius in an environment with very little oxygen, so it cannot fully combust into flame. What happens is called pyrolysis, a word that simply means transformation by heat. The volatile compounds inside the material, the oils, the gases, the water vapor, escape as smoke. The cellular structure partially breaks down, but the carbon skeleton, the microscopic framework that gave the original material its rigidity, stays intact. What you are left with is not ash. Ash is what you get from full combustion, when oxygen is plentiful and the carbon burns away. What you are left with is something else entirely: a lattice, an intricate, rigid, porous structure made almost entirely of stable carbon. Now, here is where the numbers become genuinely difficult to believe until you understand them. A single gram of high-quality biochar contains between 200 and 400 square meters of internal surface area. Say that again slowly. 1 gram, surface area equivalent to 4 tennis courts. The pores, tunnels, and chambers inside that single crumb of carbon would stretch for extraordinary distances if you could unroll them flat. And those internal surfaces are what change everything about how soil ecology operates when biochar is present. The organisms that make soil fertile, bacteria, fungi, archaea, do not thrive in open, exposed conditions. They are small enough that a single raindrop can flush them completely out of sandy soil. Sunlight kills the most sensitive species. Temperature swings destabilize populations. What they need is surfaces, protected interior surfaces where they can colonize, build communities, build stable structures, and persist through difficult conditions. Biochar gives them that in quantities that dwarf anything naturally present in most soils. A single biochar particle introduces more protected surface area than the surrounding soil could provide across a volume many times its own size. What follows is not a subtle improvement, it is a population explosion. Mycorrhizal networks, the thread-like fungal structures that extend plant root systems by orders of magnitude, weave through the biochar pores and reach mineral deposits that roots alone could never access. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria settle into the interior chambers and begin pulling nitrogen straight out of the atmosphere, converting it into a plant-usable form, at no cost, with no bag required. The numbers that come out of studies measuring microbial populations around biochar compared to untreated soil, just fractions of an inch away, are not slightly higher. They are orders of magnitude higher, a completely different ecosystem, separated by the width of a finger.
3. The economic logic of silence. The global fertilizer market is worth somewhere north of $230 billion a year. That number is not a static figure. It has grown steadily for decades, and the business model underneath it is elegantly self-reinforcing. Synthetic nitrogen spikes plant growth. The plant consumes it rapidly, and the soil is left no more fertile than before, often less so, because the salt load from repeated applications gradually damages the microbial populations that could have done the same work for free. So the garden needs more nitrogen next season, and the one after, and the one after. Add the lime to correct the pH damage, the fungicide to address the disease pressure that follows when soil biology collapses, the pesticide for the pest pressure that increases when plant immunity falls. Each problem creates the need for the next product and the next. The cycle is not broken, because the cycle is the product. A landmark study tracked biochar-amended soils over 12 years. By the end of that period, those soils required 45% less external fertilizer to produce the same yields. By year 15, synthetic inputs had been effectively eliminated. The soils were feeding themselves. From a revenue perspective, that is a catastrophe. A single, inexpensive, one-time amendment that progressively eliminates the customer's dependence on further purchases is precisely what a recurring revenue model cannot survive. This is not a hidden conspiracy. No executive called a meeting to specifically suppress biochar research. The mechanism is simpler and more structural than that. Research funding follows revenue, journals follow advertising, gardening media follows sponsors. The financial architecture of the industry creates an environment where anything that makes customers self-sufficient receives less attention, less shelf space, less marketing budget than something that needs to be repurchased every single spring.
The research exists regardless. A meta-analysis published across 438 global field studies found that sustained biochar application increases crop yields by an average of 10.8%, raises soil organic carbon by 52.5%, and when combined with existing fertilizer, boosts yields by up to 48% compared to unfertilized land. Those are not small numbers. Those are numbers that should have changed how most backyard gardens are managed decades ago. They have not. And the reason is not scientific controversy. The reason is economic incentive running in exactly the opposite direction.
4. What the soil is holding that it should not be. There is a dimension of this story that goes beyond yield and savings and touches something more personal for anyone growing food for their family.
The last
100
years of industrial
activity
left an invisible legacy in the soil of most developed nations. Lead from decades of leaded gasoline settling as fine particulates along every
the compounds
roadway.
themselves were banned. These contaminants do not announce themselves. The tomato that comes off the vine from contaminated soil looks identical to the tomato grown in clean ground. It tastes the same. It weighs the same. It photographs the same for the garden post. But the metals are there, migrating through the root system, accumulating in tissue, moving up the food chain. Biochar addresses this directly, and the mechanism is the same, porous structure that makes it effective for microbial housing. The internal surface chemistry of biochar has a particular affinity for heavy metal ions. The structure binds them and holds them immobilized in a form that plant roots cannot access or absorb. Adding biochar to a garden bed is in a very literal and measurable sense purifying the ground before the first seed goes in. This is not a minor point for anyone growing food in a suburb built on former farmland near a road that was active before 1980, or in a city with any industrial history at all. It is the difference between hoping the soil is clean and actually doing something to make it clean. Biochar also buffers pH, and it does so in a way that lime and sulfur never quite manage. Those amendments correct pH temporarily, the next season's rainfall leaches them away, and the test comes back acidic again, and the bag goes back in the cart. The alkaline mineral compounds locked within biochar's carbon structure release slowly across years, not months, stabilizing pH in a durable, plant-friendly range that does not require seasonal correction. One amendment doing work that 4 different products currently share between them.